Hey everybody, it's Professor Otaku here, and today I'm going to review Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence. But before that, I'm going to eat this ghost pepper griller thing. Before I actually get started, I have to admit that this thing is actually ice cold. So, let's get this show on the road. Oh, Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence is a semi direct sequel to the 1995 masterwork known as Ghost in the Shell. It features most of the same characters, and it's done by the original. Oh, a little tingle there. It begins. And it's directed by the original director. Now, a lot of people have trouble with Mamoru Oshii's work because he's got the same problem that a lot of other directors have, in that he's an intelligent man, or at least he knows his stuff. There's a lot of quotes from Confucius, from the Bible, from mythology, from think he gets some Shakespearean on here. And the problem with a lot of people who do speculative fiction is that they're really smart, but they got to show it off. If you catch my drift, like they gotta let everybody know. Just sounds like, is this really Ghost Pepper? I'm not hitting it yet. Anyway, oh, okay, hey, rough patch. The film itself is visually very arresting. It's so beautiful that it actually, I think, almost detracts from the story because you're too busy looking at the narrative to follow the admittedly somewhat difficult source material, which isn't. The problem with Mamoru Oshii is that he's so smart. Oh, 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 hi. Is that he's got a lot of balls in the air, and that he's very intelligent, but he doesn't know how to address this and put it out there in a way that's easily palatable. Now, I follow most of this stuff because I've done a lot of reading on speculative fiction sort of thing. So this is stuff that I'm used to, and I like the way that Oshii directs, and I like the way that he puts out his work, but I know it's not for everybody. Oh gosh. Oh boy. Okay. All right. This is really good. It's just like the spiciness comes in fits and starts, much like the film. Interestingly enough, if you took Sid Mead's work on Blade Runner and you crossed it with Jodorowsky's Dune and H.R. Geiger in a whole lot of places, you're starting to get on to what Ghost in the Shell Innocence has visually. However, there is a very long stretch right in the middle of the film, which has to be, I'd say 10, 20 or 30, not 30 minutes, but at least 15 to 20 minutes, where they go and they cycle through the same scene several times with little differences in like Endless Eight style. Which you could be easily forgiven if that particular set of scenes loses you for the film. Um, oh, whoa, hey, there we go. Finally got enough to get a nice tingle on there. I was expecting a lot more out of this, to be perfectly honest. If you're going to call something a ghost pepper, like, man up and throw it in there. I'm kind of regretting that I didn't write down more, but there's a whole lot of this movie that is all built in this idea of something extremely basically extremely Japanese being mixed with something that's extremely international or extremely Western, I guess, Westernized. Like it's extremely modern, if nothing else. And there's a whole long discussion we could talk about how modernity and westernness are interlinked. But there is a huge scene right in the middle of the film, which is all CGI, and it's all very pretty. It's a good, there's nothing wrong with CGI as long as you use it properly. And I mean, I think in this there was a lot of visuals that they just had to do a lot of panning shots and a lot of wide roundabout shots to do. And they use CGI very effectively for that. Now this is, what's the vintage on this? 2004 by my reckoning. Japanese CGI is always kind of spotty, but it works well in this, and it makes it a really nice unnatural feeling to it, especially when they use it in a certain section of the film that really relies on feeling out of sorts and unnatural. Unfortunately, right in the middle of that is the most self-indulgent bit in the entire film, which is probably playing right about here right now. But yeah, it just, every second of it, this particular scene here just screams, "Hey, did we mention that this is not a Western work?" The film itself is visually very interesting and very arresting. The dialogue just kind of, they have a tendency to go on diatribes, and it's really kind of frustrating because I don't go to watch a film for a huge diatribe or a treatise on speculative cybernetics. I don't really watch this stuff because I want to get a lecture on this stuff. I'll read a lecture on this stuff. I will read a book of speculative, this sort of thing. It's kind of making my tongue numb. But I don't really want to watch a movie about it. But luckily it remembers by the end of the film, the last 10-15 minutes of this flick are an action scene. With a lot of just the creepiest, weirdest visuals you can imagine. The thing is that these little girls, or these gynoids, look like little girls, and so they're killing people. Now, if I was reviewing Soul Taker like it was suggested for me to do, I would be screaming, "Akiyuki Shinbo, you perverted hack!" But I'm not, because that is a different director with a whole different set of psychosexual problems. But on the whole, in the grand scheme of things, it's a little tingling. That's just nothing. In the grand scheme of Ghost in the Shell, this is pretty straightforward and pretty with it. This is pretty much along the lines of what the Ghost in the Shell TV show ended up being. And I haven't seen Arise yet, but if it's like this, I can probably deal with that just fine. Unfortunately, its esotericness and, frankly, pretentious nature, which is something you should expect from Mamoru Oshii because that's kind of his shtick. The esotericness and the weirdness of this, if you don't know your Judeo-Christian mythology, Shakespeare, Confucianism, and there's probably several other dozen philosophers in there that I'm not well versed enough to really get a handle on. If you don't know all the stuff that Mamoru Oshii wants you to know going into this flick, you're gonna get turned off pretty fast. And I won't blame you for it. Like, I give this one, if I have to give it a hot pepper rating, it's probably like a 3. I don't know, because this is kind of meh. But I'd give this a solid 3 out of 5 or a 75 out of 100. I know those are two very different scores, but bear with me here for a moment. Oof. Oh god, did I just rub hot pepper in my eye? Nope, I'm not screaming in pain. I can still see, so I think I'm all right. Um, I would give this a I would give this a passing with colors, with recommendation, and with commendations, but I wouldn't give it like absolutely must see. There is a very specific intended audience for this movie, and it's very possible that you are not going to be one of them. Um, it's not accessible. It's not a terribly like you remember the parts in the Matrix. You remember all the boring parts in the Matrix, especially Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions, where they just barked on about nothing for several minutes. You're gonna get the same feeling out of this, and well, the action scenes, much like the Matrix and the films after it, are very much worth it to watch. You might be better off just kind of fast forwarding through this. It's long. It's not that long. It's an hour and 40 minutes, which is pretty long for a Japanese animated feature. It's plotting, and when I say plotting, I don't mean leisurely. I mean plotting in the way that you ever see an elephant try to walk backwards, sort of plotting. It's very slow, and all of Mamoroshi's movies are pretty slow, but they don't. Usually, they have a little bit of substance, a little bit more substance to them than this one. I give it a tentative recommendation. I suggest you give it a shot, give it a try, see if you can stomach it, and if you can, great, you're gonna have a good time. But if it's not gonna it's not gonna scratch an action itch. It's not going to say, "Hey, this is this is not the action movie of the century." But it's still got more bite than this fucking thing. You disappoint me, Taco Bell. I was expecting to burn. Well, until next time, thanks for tuning in, and thank you to all of you folks who helped me get finally to and past 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Feeling like I'm finally getting some traction, so this one goes out to you guys. So, until next time, this is Professor Otaku signing off.